Don't Shout at the Vegetables, Lessons in Sustainable Leadership and Human Growth, written and narrated by Max Kent.
Hello everyone, welcome back. And this is our episode 5 from Don't Shout at the Vegetables, the latest book created by Max, my partner in crime. Max, it's great to have you back on the podcast. So let's dig right into this chapter of your book. And if we go right to our first question, how do different people respond to different levels of visibility and pressure?
Hi, Charlotte. Thanks for having me back on our podcast and talking further about the book. It's been fantastic seeing the reactions out there in the marketplace to the launch of this and all the exciting things that are coming as a result of that. So it's been a great process to get this out. Let's respond to that question first of all. What this was about when I was writing the book is that understanding of how everyone's different. We're all humans. How much people differ in terms of the sort of visibility and scrutiny that they can comfortably work under. Everyone's got different levels of what they can tolerate and what they like to thrive in. So people thrive in the spotlight and they love being compared to others. They love the competition. They love having their name up in lights and on a league table. And if they're not number one, they want to know how they get there. Other people do their best work with quieter check-ins in quieter conditions and just giving them the trust to get on with it, knowing that they're going to do a good job. So when leaders actually ignore that and apply pressure as a blanket right across all the personality traits they've got in their team, they unintentionally scorch some of the best people. So using that term scorch, because if we're still using the vegetable analogy, because that flows through everything we're talking about here, that's putting the wrong plants in the wrong light, and that will burn them and not help them grow. So whilst that works for some, it doesn't work for others. So it's really critical to recognize those differences and allow yourself to create zones of comfort where the different working styles of your team and your company can still contribute at a high level, but in their own way. So hope that makes sense as a first answer on this one.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And also about what you said, the different types of people that we have, and how leadership would respond to them, in terms of visibility. Thank you so much for sharing. And my second question for today is, why do the full sun cultures burn people out?
Yeah, great question. And also when we do these episodes, our last series was on hyper leadership, and it's such a coincidence that we did that at the time when I was finishing the book and getting it out, because those concepts of hyper leadership, and if you haven't heard that series, I'd urge you to go back and listen to that, if you haven't already, because it does play into the themes that we're talking about here. And really what we're doing is taking the analogy of the garden and how to grow plants and the right conditions they need and all those things that's around it, and taking that into the context of business and working with people. So if you talk about that context as full sun, that is basically saying that regardless of the plants I'm growing, I'm going to put them all in direct sunlight and expect them all to grow and react the same way. When, again, we're dealing with humans here, and they are all different. We're all different. We've all got our own ways of working. So having a full sun culture that insists on kind of constant availability and instant responses for people and high public performance, you know what it's like. Some businesses just thrive on whether your team's status is showing green or red. Some people don't work that way. Some businesses expect you to work that way, and they celebrate that visible hustle and how hard you're working, and are you working out of hours and all the hours possible, and treating rest or privacy as a weakness. I work in the UK. I'm self-employed, so having a holiday is a rarity, but I would like one. With US companies, they don't really have holidays, and that's seen as almost like a weakness if you take a vacation or a holiday, or if you switch your phone off and not being available, they treat that as a weakness. Actually, over time, this burns people out completely, and really narrows the range of personalities who are actually able to stay in those environments. So the organization itself might look energetic on the surface, but underneath, what is happening is there's chronic fatigue and fear being embedded as a culture. And really, what that ends up as is the business starts to stagnate and not grow as fast, and the leaders don't know how to fix it. And to use the analogy book, they end up shouting at the vegetables, which is basically just shout at everyone until they feel fear and pressure to perform, regardless of how quickly they burn out and end up not being able to perform anymore. So that's what a full song culture does to people.
Fantastic. Max, that's it's very very interesting. Especially I'm learning also as we go with the with your new aspects and how you're tying in hyper leadership into this. So the next question for you is, what does it mean to be a leader who provides warmth and not heat?
Yeah, I mean they're very different things, aren't they? I mean, you providing warmth is that using empathy and understanding and a true understanding of the individual personalities and character types that you've got within your team or your organization to mean that you're a source of energy and safety rather than pressure. Putting the heat on people is just pressure, whereas warmth is more about clear expectations and encouragement and honest feedback and being present when it really matters, being there for your team in a way that nurtures them and helps them. And you really, that's what you're there to do as a leader. If you're there to bring the heat, which is kind of urgency, criticism, volatility, emotional inconsistency, um, I don't think that's a strategy for long-term growth, and I think that is just leads again to burnout and people leaving. One of the things I've been thinking of in the book is how high-performing sports teams are led, and there is great degree of pressure in those environments, but the best teams still come back to the fact that they're led by people who have a true understanding of how to bring warmth to people in the right areas. They can still bring pressure, but it's done an emotionally present way, not just as a cold, uncaring pressure, and which just leads to again to that fatigue and burnout. And teams actually grow towards warmth because it feels safe, and it feels safe for them to take risks because they know that there's a safety net in the terms of their leader supporting them to take those risks rather than the fear of just knowing they've got to risk everything for their own livelihoods without being supported. And also, they can admit difficulty. They can admit when they've made mistakes because they know they have that warmth and support rather than just cold pressure.
Oh, I relate to this, and also leading a variety of different generations or different cultures, and that's something that leaders need to be mindful,
Mm.
how the different generations react to pressure, what they are seeking, and I see it a lot in my new talents, that it's very important for them to feel safe, to provide this warmth. And not too much pressure because of this dilemma of burnout. Very good point. Max, this brings me to my next question. So, how do leaders identify where their team needs shade versus structure?
Okay, so you identify shade, and we're not talking about throwing shade at someone here. We're talking about the garden analogy again of when shade is needed to stop plants burning out, stop you burning out. You need some shade in the form of shelter. Um, so we're talking about shade in the form of shelter here, and that is identified by noticing where people are shrinking or flinching. Um, if they're suddenly not able to perform in sort of those pressurized heat filled environments, that's a problem. If someone who used to contribute freely has suddenly gone quiet, that's a signal. Shade in this context can look like this person showing up to fewer meetings, cancelling out of meetings. Um, it can be you not accepting more meetings, not saying yes to everything, setting clearer boundaries and saying no to things is another key aspect of this. It's not a problem to say no to something if that's what you feel, and you can protect yourself that way. Also asking permission to work asynchronously or asking for private feedback rather than public challenge. I mean, that old adage of praise in public, criticize in private is so true here. Why why bring heat to someone when they're looking for shade and that would help them? Surely we want to help our teams to be successful and grow. Um, so structuring in terms of management and leadership is things like regular one-to-ones, setting clear expectations and goals. That's providing a real structure for growth. But giving that shade or shelter or safe place to your teams, that actually protects the human that's doing the growing. And we want our teams to grow, I would imagine.
Absolutely. Growing, upskilling, um, it's so important. And then how does the whole notion of balanced light increase psychological safety?
Again, using the garden analogy is something I'm going to keep doing with this because it's something I've been so passionate about in so many teams I've led. So many people that have worked for me in teams will know all of the analogies in the book and know the title of the book, back to front because they've seen me work that way with them. Balanced light is about if you put a plant in um, light for 24 hours a day, it will overgrow and it will become unwieldy and too much beyond it was supposed to be. So you've got to have the balance to grow in a measured way. Um, so what that means is it can't be too much. You can't give them too much heat, can't give them too much light. You've got to give people enough information and visibility to feel connected and trusted, but not so much scrutiny that they feel constantly judged. And that's that balance. It increases their psychological safety because their mistakes aren't exposed as public spectacles, and successes are genuinely recognized. Again, criticizing in private, praise in public. Remember that because if you try it the other way around, you'll get a very different result that won't be the one you want. In this kind of environment, people are way more likely to be honest with you about issues early on because they feel safe to be able to come to you and say, I've made a mistake or I've done things wrong. What do we do? Your teams need to be given the ability to do that and not live in fear. Doing all of that actually as a leader lets you address these issues before they become crises.
Yeah, absolutely. But then explain to us, why is sensitivity a strength and not a limitation?
Coming from a English person, this is not something that is historic for my country because we were historically told to have a stiff upper lip, which means that anything that you're feeling emotionally, you brush under the carpet, you don't think about, and you get on with it. I never agreed with that as a premise, and I'm glad to see that England and the UK is aligning with other parts of the world where sensitivity is seen as a strength, not as a weakness. Because in a hard driving culture, that feels like too much. In historic businesses, that would be seen as too much, being sensitive, too emotional, too cautious, too affected by decisions and the mood of the business. Actually, in reality, sensitive people are like early warning systems. They notice those micro tensions before less sensitive people see them coming. So they see things going wrong ahead. So they see unfairness, they see overload before it becomes a visible problem for everyone else. So as a leader, when you treat that sensitivity as data and feedback rather than a flaw or something that's wrong, you actually get better information about the true state of your own organization. So I think the more we embrace those character types, the better.
Well, Max, that is a wrap for episode 5, Light and Shades. And as you said, great leadership isn't about turning up the heat, it's about creating the right climate. And some people need light, others need the shade. And the best teams, they do thrive when there is room for both. So, to our listeners, as you head back into your week, ask yourself, where can you offer more warmth and less pressure? Max, do you have any final words?
I just, yeah, hope that people are taking on the theories and the practices of what we're talking about here, because it really will make a difference to the way you lead teams. And I'm so passionate about leaders taking on these things and acting in this way, because that will help everyone they come into contact with. And by doing that, we'll get a better working business world. So it's a small step, but let's hope that people start to act on it.
Thank you all for listening and see you next time.
Don't Shout at the Vegetables: Lessons in Sustainable Leadership and Human Growth. Written and narrated by Max Kent.